Me? I'm a sociopath who loves a good hunt. While I was in the hospital in S country, a bunch of rapists actually broke in. The female doctor on duty, Laura, hid me here and there. The cops, who were supposed to be there in 5 minutes, were nowhere to be seen all night. Finally, Laura decided to sacrifice herself so I could get away first, saying, "They're after me." I refused. Get away? Why? I was just starting to have fun. So, S country. I ended up in the hospital with a nasty stomach bug. I'd just gotten in 4 and was starting to feel a bit better when suddenly this guy with a huge beard shows up at my bedside, just staring at me. Doesn't he know that's super rude? Luckily, Laura, the doctor who admitted me, came back and managed to get him to leave. The guy kept looking back as he walked away. Laura quietly threatened to kick him out if he didn't knock it off. He shot back, "Nosy bitch." Laura didn't argue, just reassured me, "Don't worry, I'll move you to a different room." Honestly, I didn't care. She didn't get it if she hadn't shown up when she did, would have already beaten that guy to a pulp. He actually got lucky. The doctor's name was Laura. She helped me with my 4 bag and told me to follow her. The hospital was dead quiet late at night, and the hallway lights were dim. It was weird. I clearly remembered seeing a few nurses when I first arrived, but now they were all gone. The hospital was old but huge. Was it normal for only one doctor to be running around doing everything after dark? And this dump of a hospital was actually recommended in the local tourist guide as a women's hospital. But as I walked, even though there weren't many patients, I didn't see a single female patient. Even weirder, she took me straight to the doctor's lounge. She reached for the light switch, click, but the light was broken. So she gave me an old-fashioned flashlight. Then she tried to comfort me again, "Don't be scared, people around here are just a bit too curious." Right, that creepy guy's behavior was just curiosity. But she was busy and, after a few more instructions, her pager went off and she had to leave. Before she left, she told me, "Lock the door, don't go to the bathroom. If someone knocks, ask if it's a man or a woman. If it's a man, don't open it, even if he says he's a doctor." I dozed off for a bit, and soon the 4 drip was finished. Laura never came back. I pulled the needle out myself and decided to go to the bathroom. Don't ask, you just have to pee after an 4. As I opened the door, there was someone pressed right against it, a dark figure almost stumbling in. I calmly pushed him out. In the dim hallway light, I saw it was the same guy who'd been staring at me in the ward earlier. He looked surprised too. "How is it you?" I looked at him, puzzled. "Who else were you expecting?" He didn't say anything, just grinned and shook his head at me, "So weird." I said, "Excuse me, please let me pass." Then I walked around him towards the bathroom. Unexpectedly, he followed right behind me, sticking close. All the way to the hospital bathroom door. The bathroom light was broken too. It was pitch black inside. I was standing at the doorway, trying to see. Suddenly, he shoved me in. In the darkness, he lunged at me. "Idiot! Scream all you want, no one's coming to save you." A little while later, blood-curdling screams echoed from the bathroom. He was right, no one came, no matter how loud the screams. I came out of the bathroom and saw blood splattered on my clothes in the dim hallway light. Damn it! Now I had to find someone to clean up this mess. But when I got back to the lounge, Dr. Laura still wasn't there. Just then, my hand slipped and my phone fell to the floor. I bent down to pick it up. Suddenly, someone tiptoed in from outside the door. The person moved very quietly, but the old wooden door still creaked. I turned around, and the flashlight beam hit my face. Dr. Laura almost jumped out of her skin. She rushed over and covered my mouth. "Don't make a sound." I almost laughed, pulling her hand away. "What's going on?" She didn't answer. Instead, she crawled over, turned off the flashlight, then crept to the door and peered out the window. Then she pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she frantically typed. I wanted to tell her about my self-defense killing. She quickly covered my mouth again. Fine, let her deal with her stuff first. She called the police, saying some criminals had broken into the hospital. I'm hiding in the doctor's lounge right now. There's a patient with me. Please, hurry. The person on the other end asked, which floor is the lounge on? She answered without hesitation, second floor. Okay. After hanging up, she even tried to comfort me. Don't be scared, the police station is only 5 minutes away. The police didn't come. About 10 minutes later, there was a fierce banging on the window. Laura looked up, hopeful, but then her face filled with terror. She quickly pushed my head down. I wanted to say it wasn't necessary, but I was soon distracted by voices outside the door. How can she not be here? The officer said she was in the lounge. The sneaky woman must have run off. I could feel Laura trembling, so I gently patted her back to help her think clearly. The cops sold you out. The next second, the glass above our heads shattered. They kept smashing the glass from outside, and shards rained down on us. Laura. I know you're in there. In this situation, Laura somehow managed not to scream. Instead, she firmly gripped my hand and pulled me further in, dragging me from the dark shadows to hide under a narrow bed. With a loud bang, a window was completely smashed. A dark figure squeezed through the broken window and then went to open the door. 3 people rushed in from outside. Laura, stop hiding. Come on out. They started searching the lounge. The lounge was cluttered with all sorts of junk. Using her familiarity with the layout, Laura pushed me towards the door in the darkness. Several times, we dodged the beams of phone flashlights sweeping randomly around the room. Just as we reached the door, Laura suddenly grabbed my hand and pulled me out. Thrilling. To my surprise, Laura was smart, had a strong mindset, and was very quick to act. After pulling me out, she immediately locked the door and even took out a hairpin, trying to stick it in the keyhole. Not a single wasted motion. The people inside were already pounding on the door. Shouting Laura, Laura, mixed with a stream of curses. Of course, someone tried to climb out the window. But it was a window with small panes. Only one of them, a shorter man, could possibly squeeze through. While Laura wasn't looking, I quickly punched the short guy in the temple. It was a quick move, but very effective. He hung there, stuck in the window. No one reacted, not even his buddies. In fact, his buddies were still roughly pushing him, telling him to get up and stop blocking the way. Laura had just finished securing the door when she rushed over, grabbed me, and we ran. I turned back and waved at the people behind the glass. Bye-bye now. Laura led me out of the building, and we ran towards the security booth. Then we found the security guard wearing headphones and playing on his phone. Laura frantically banged on the security booth door. The guard finally turned around, looking a bit surprised. Laura was furious. Didn't you see all those people breaking in? The guard opened the door and let us in. It was that small movement I saw him thrust a stun gun at Laura. Amazingly, Laura was prepared. She kicked him right in the groin. Her expression was a mix of anger and fear as she jabbed the stun gun into the guard. You really are one of them. I pay your salary, and this is how you treat me. The guard screamed, his voice crackling like auto-tune. Laura told me to record him with my phone. Who bribed you? How many people came? What do they want? The guard initially refused to talk, but Laura wasn't messing around. If he didn't talk, the stun gun was heading for his crotch. Finally, he had to spill. It's your 3 cousins. In that instant, Laura's expression was complicated, and the stun gun in her hand froze mid-air. The guard said, Dr. Laura, you can't keep this hospital running. Why don't you just give it up? Talk to Alan and the others nicely." As he said this, he suddenly twisted Laura's arm holding the stun gun and pinned it behind her back. Laura screamed in pain as he twisted her arm, yelling at me, "Go! Go!" The two of them were still struggling. I slowly walked over, grabbed a nearby huge, full ashtray, and smashed it hard on the guard's head. Instantly, blood mixed with ash streamed down the man's head. Laura immediately picked up the stun gun and jabbed him hard with it, shocking him until he twitched a few times and lost consciousness. Only then did she grab my hand and run out, locking the security booth door from the outside. I glanced through the glass door. Actually, she didn't know that I had already fractured the man's skull. He wouldn't have been able to get out even if it wasn't locked. He would die slowly in there. Laura dragged me all the way to the main hospital gate. As expected, the security guards had all been bought off, so the main gate was locked tight. If that wasn't enough, Laura had grabbed the guard's walkie-talkie before leaving, and someone was constantly talking on it. Non-stop cursing, updating each other on their progress finding Laura. Then someone said, "I found the love oil." Laura threw the walkie-talkie away in terror. I went over and picked up the walkie-talkie. "Are these people after you?" Laura pressed her lips together tightly and said, "Don't be afraid, there's still time." Then her gaze fell on the wall beside us. I looked too. I estimated the wall to be about 3.23 meters high. She said, "You stand on my shoulders and climb out first." I looked at her thoughtfully. Okay. Actually, we were both tall. If she boosted me up, I could definitely make it. It was her getting out that was a bit iffy. What was she really thinking? But she had already crouched down. It would be rude to refuse. I held her hand and climbed onto her shoulders. She stumbled a bit, then quickly steadied me and told me to jump down. "Sorry, let's try again." I said, "I'm a bit heavier than you think." Even at a time like this, she actually said, "It's okay, you have a healthy figure." I once again put my foot on the wall and stepped onto her shoulders, reaching for the top of the wall. She said, "Use some force, pull yourself up. Don't be afraid, you won't get seriously hurt if you fall." It wasn't that I couldn't get up. It was that, from my height, I could already see two men who had sneakily approached nearby behind us. I said expressionlessly, "Dr. Laura, let go of my ankle." Laura was already using all her strength. The sound was almost forced through gritted teeth, "Hold steady." When she let go of my ankle, I said, "Can't hold steady." I spread my arms and fell backward. I landed on those two men at an awkward angle. Two screams immediately followed. Laura didn't even glance at the two men. She rushed over and pulled me up. "Are you okay?" I flexed my wrist. "I'm fine." Her composure, had she been professionally trained? After confirming I was okay, Laura grabbed one of the men, yanking him up by his collar. "It really is you." The man smiled nonchalantly. "Laura, long time no see." "Laura, you're my cousin, how could you do this to me?" This, I was also very curious about. But the man didn't answer, looking relaxed, even smiling. "Just kidding, Laura. My chest really hurts, you should take a look at it quickly." This attitude was even more infuriating. Laura was about to lose it. "I don't think this is a joke." Suddenly, he coughed up blood. They both fell silent. There was still someone nearby screaming intermittently. Standing behind her, I spoke quietly, "I might have broken his ribs when I fell on him." Laura turned and looked at me. I shrugged. "I weigh 60 kilos, you know. It's not excessive for a free fall to break a few of his bones, right?" Laura thought it was normal. But she didn't help him, and it was even less likely she'd take him back to the medical building. Instead, she quickly got up and urged me to hurry and keep climbing the wall. Her cousin number 1 pleaded to no avail and instantly became very resentful. "You can't escape, Laura." Laura gave him a cold look. He said, while spitting blood, "Everyone here is looking for you. They will definitely find you, and then they will rape you to death." At this point, I said, if it were me, I would kill him. Laura paused for a moment, silent. Cousin number 1 was also shocked. "Who are you?" I walked over and kicked him. He spat out another mouthful of blood. Seriously, what's a murderer got to be shocked about? Do I need to repeat what he just said? The funny thing is, cousin number 1 seemed to have never considered that he could be killed in retaliation. Perhaps in his mind, the victim must be weak and kind, and would absolutely never harm him. At this moment, he was terrified. "Laura, don't forget my mom is your mom's older sister." I tried to persuade Laura, if it were me, I'd rather stand in the dock than lie on the autopsy table. But Laura didn't respond, instead urging me to quickly climb the wall. "All right then." While she was turned away, I secretly stomped on the man's ribs again. He sprayed blood all over his own nose and stopped moving. This time, I pulled myself up and over the wall with one hand, then reached down to signal her to jump up. She should be able to make it with a little effort, right? However, Laura suddenly reached out and threw the stun gun in her hand forcefully over the wall. She said, "For your protection. Run south. There's a gas station about a kilometer away. It's run by your people, they'll help you." She turned and ran towards the medical building. This place, these people, they were so strange. They had successfully caught my attention. I climbed down from the wall and followed her. This old, run-down hospital, the most recent construction marks looked to be from the 80s. Most of the wiring was already aging, it must have been abandoned for some time. Currently, only the medical building had the most areas with power. People are also drawn to light. Laura running there was definitely asking for trouble. And I heard that S country has a peculiar habit, they like to queue. In other countries, when faced with a crime, people either mind their own business and leave quickly, or they call the police immediately. The amazing people of S country, they queue. I suspected that not only were outsiders looking for her, but those male patients might also be getting restless. Laura wasn't stupid, so what on earth was she going in there for? I followed behind her and watched as she pried open a ventilation duct and climbed in. Then I listened to her carefully crawling through the ventilation duct. Actually, the sound was very faint, she must have been wriggling close to the surface, but I have good hearing. At this time, all those patients had come out and were wandering around in the corridors. There were even people smoking in the hallway. The hospital's electrical system was already bad, the hallway lights were dim and flickered from time to time, and now they'd made it all smoky. I tried to make out the sounds in the ventilation shaft. She was probably trying to cross the long corridor to the stairwell. I also made my way to the stairwell. As soon as I walked in, I ran into a guy peeing against the wall in the stairwell. I don't want to stereotype, but they just had to disgust me. I could already hear movement overhead. Laura was about to come down. The peeing guy heard it too. Without even pulling up his pants properly, he started craning his neck to look up. Hearing the sound of a panel being patiently opened overhead, he held his waistband with one hand and started reaching for his walkie-talkie with the other. In the darkness, I reached out my hand, then reached out again. He was really gross. But seeing him about to reach his back pocket, and the panel above our heads about to open, I held my breath, lunged forward, grabbed his neck, and dragged him down from upstairs. He only had time to struggle twice before I squeezed his throat, making it impossible for him to make a sound, or I could just crush it. He didn't dare move. Just then, Laura also opened the panel and jumped down from above. She didn't dare turn on her flashlight, just felt her way up the handrail. Listening to the sounds, she went straight to the 4th floor. Only then did I let go and look down at the filthy thing in my hand. I was too curious. Why are you targeting Dr. Laura? The man still wanted to argue with me. I plunged my hand straight into his abdomen. Do you want me to rip your guts out? He could clearly feel my fingers inside his flesh, and for a moment, he was terrified beyond belief. After a while, he said, I didn't mean to hurt Laura. Not even a ghost would believe that. I was getting impatient and dug my fingers around in his flesh. Tell me why. The reason was, he said, this was a women's hospital. For a moment, I suspected there was something wrong with my ears. But it was fine. This hospital was strange anyway, and I was going to ask about it. This story had to start with Laura's family. In class-conscious country, especially in small towns, Laura belonged to the upper class. But she didn't choose the path her family had laid out for her. After finishing her studies and returning, for some crazy reason, she insisted on taking over the family's semi-abandoned general hospital and converting it into a women's hospital. Everyone laughed at her. What money could a woman possibly make? But somehow, she found the key to wealth. Previously, there were hardly any female patients in the hospital, but after she established her hospital, it was packed every day. At the end of last year, the hospital was featured in the local tourist brochure and recommended as the most suitable hospital for women. Logically, the women's hospital should have been heading for glory. But it was at this very moment that she had a falling out with her family. Because Laura's father decided that her cousins would take over the hospital. Now that it's established, it should naturally be taken over by the men in the family. She refused, and the family began to pressure the hospital staff. In a short period, more than half of the doctors left. The hospital, at some unknown point, began to be occupied by male patients, and there were several safety incidents. Then it became the mess it was now. That's why I saw Laura on duty alone tonight. Dr. Laura wouldn't let go, so they decided not to wait anymore. I asked him, "Are you done?" He said he was done, begging me to pull my hand out and then take him to get his wound treated. I pulled my fingers out, then punched him straight in the mouth, shattering his teeth. He passed out. Couldn't be helped. I hate people who pee in public. I went up to the 4th floor, listened to the sounds coming from the rooms, and found the 3rd room. There was someone inside, but the door was unlocked. I pushed the door open. A cold glint flashed in the darkness. A large axe came swinging straight at my head. Careless. In the instant I was about to be hit by the axe, I dodged sharply to the side, and the cold axe blade flew past my face. Then a club came swinging at me. I grabbed the club in front of me, then took a blow to the back of my head and was knocked to the ground. Just as I was about to lose my temper, I saw a trembling old woman in front of me. The kind that would probably die if I pushed her. Then I was surrounded by them and beaten with clubs. So this is what it's come to for me. Only when Laura finally recognized me did I manage to get free and crawl out. She looked like she was about to go crazy. "Why are you back again?" I rubbed my arm, looked around, and was shocked by what I saw. "How did you manage to hide so many people?" That's right, these were the missing female patients from the hospital. 7 of them, of all ages. Patients in poor physical condition, and the incident happened so suddenly. How on earth did she do it? Laura said, they were already on the 4th floor. I frowned. Right now, Laura didn't have time to explain much to me. She started making calls for help. Knowing the police couldn't be trusted, she decided to call home. That was the right idea. No matter how big the disagreement, her parents couldn't just watch their own daughter die here, right? Turns out, they could. Laura called her mom. Her mom sounded like the kind of indecisive housewife, and Laura was still trying to reason with her. Dad might not believe me. Her mom turned around and handed the phone to her husband. Laura's own father. He took the phone and chewed her out. No matter how Laura explained, her dad refused to believe that her cousins would do such a thing. Finally, Laura cried out in despair, "Dad! I'm going to die. There are many patients with me, please stop them." Her dad's reply was, "I should give your cousins a bonus for killing you, you liar." Then he hung up. The small room fell into a deathly silence. Then the women gathered around, surrounding her. A girl whispered, "Dr. Laura, don't be sad." Just then, someone pushed the door from the outside. Everyone tensed up. Laura shielded them all behind her, staring at the door. Someone outside seemed to be testing, "Laura, are you in there?" I looked at Laura, thinking whether I should help her take care of it. However, at that moment, Laura stood up. Laura walked to the door and rehung the axe that had fallen earlier. Then, she and the healthier-looking girl stood on either side, holding 4 stands, ready to strike. Once they were ready, Laura unlocked the door. Almost simultaneously, the door was opened, and the large axe swung down. "Got one. Not as fast as me." Quickly, Laura and the little girl, holding 4 stands, rushed to the doorway and pinned down the remaining 2 men. I chased after them and saw Laura holding a man down firmly on the ground. But the little girl was struggling, unable to hold her man down, and nearly got thrown off. I silently kicked the man in the crotch. The man shuddered and stopped moving. The girl hadn't reacted yet, still pressing him down with all her might. At that moment, I smelled a strong scent of blood in the air. Turning around, Laura had slit that person's throat. The girl also raised a scalpel. Seeing his companion killed, the other man struggled frantically, "Help." I immediately walked over, stomped on his head, and with a crack, twisted it. He was dead. Laura immediately pulled the girl away and said to me, "Help me." Saying that, she started dragging one of the bodies towards a nearby room. I was amazed, she really didn't have a single wasted motion. I dragged one in each hand and followed her. This was another abandoned hospital room. Laura hid all the bodies under the hospital beds. Only then did she collapse onto the floor, panting. I looked at her quietly. "You killed someone." And very decisively. Laura answered irrelevantly, "Actually, there were a total of 11 female patients in this hospital." I was stunned for a moment. "For more?" "Yes, all critical cases." Her tone became vicious. "I'd rather stand trial than let my patients be burned to ashes." Did she mean that if they died, they wouldn't even get an autopsy? She looked at me. "Shirley, I'm so sorry for getting you involved in this." She said this hospital wasn't always like this. I already knew that. But, from her mouth, I heard a different version of the story. In this small town, because of gender discrimination, many women went their whole lives, from birth to death, without ever setting foot in a hospital. Laura's original intention in establishing this hospital was simply to change this situation. Making money was just a byproduct. It was only later, when she faced pressure from her family, that she could only open a small door in the hospital, and the female patients were all treated secretly upstairs. That's why she said they were already on the 4th floor. I was lost in thought. It seemed she didn't want to leave with me because she wanted to protect the other patients. "You're not telling me all this just to let me know the inside story, are you?" She said, "I'm sorry, I really don't have the ability to send you out again." I smiled. "Need my help?" That little girl clearly wasn't reliable. Laura looked up. "I need to go upstairs to check on the critical patients." She asked me to follow her, and when she got into a fight, she wanted me to find the right moment to land a finishing blow. I said, "Okay." Laura took me back to the room where everyone had been hiding before. She started to arm herself. 2 older women took off 2 pouch-like items from their bodies, which had many pockets. Laura put one on herself and handed one to me. I held it but didn't put it on. Then I watched her continuously stuff things into those small pockets in the storage room. Syringes, scalpels, ampoules, tourniquets, blood pressure cuff armbands, and so on. She also carried an orthopedic splint on her back. She asked me what I wanted. I casually picked up a fire axe. This one. Finally, the main event arrived. She fashioned a crossbow from the old lady's cane and a tourniquet. This time, if you told me the old lady hadn't whittled it beforehand, I wouldn't believe you. I vaguely felt that the tables might have turned. Not long after locking the door and going out, Laura received a call from her cousin number 2. Cousin number 2 was gnashing his teeth on the other end. "Where are you hiding?" Laura didn't say a word, just resolutely led me forward. "Cousin number 2, you don't care about your patients anymore?" Laura still didn't say anything. It wasn't until we reached the 5th floor and entered an empty room. Only then did she speak softly, "I'm on the 5th floor. Come and find me if you dare." Then she hung up the phone and decisively stood on a chair to unscrew the bolts on the ventilation duct panel. Soon, footsteps and shouts came from outside. "Laura!" Hearing the voices getting closer, Laura moved faster and faster. But after she opened the ventilation duct, she didn't climb up. Instead, she pulled me behind a shelf, leaving the opening uncovered. Listening to them kick open one room after another, our room was finally kicked open too. With a click, the light was turned on. 2 men came in and searched around, immediately spotting the open ventilation duct. They walked over to look. "Laura? Did she climb in here?" One of them moved a chair and stood on it. "Laura, you can't escape." That was the moment. Laura reached for a syringe, held it in her hand, and rushed out. With a scream, the man fell off the chair. Laura immediately injected the anesthetic. The other man threw a punch, which she blocked twice using the orthopedic splint as a shield. The impact of flesh against steel made a dull thud. Seeing she was about to lose her footing, I casually threw the axe I was holding. Laura almost screamed. But the axe lodged firmly in the man's head. She only froze for a second, then said nothing. I walked over and pulled my axe back. Laura gestured for me to climb up. "Quick, get up." I didn't hesitate and immediately climbed into the ventilation duct. After a while, Laura also climbed in. At this point, she took out a roll of tourniquets tied together, attached my axe to it, probably intending to knock down that chair. But after swinging it twice, she missed both times. I held back a laugh and said to her, "Let me do it." She hesitated for a moment, but then looked down at the man I had killed with the thrown axe and handed it to me. I took it, and with one swing of the axe, I smashed the chair to pieces, sending it flying far away. Sounds were already coming from outside the door. Someone was chasing us. Laura quickly replaced the ventilation duct panel, covering the opening, and gestured for me to lie flat and stay still. After 2 people rushed in, looked around, and roared, "Laura!" Thinking she had killed someone and fled, they quickly left. Laura breathed a sigh of relief. Laura led me purposefully through the ventilation ducts. Fortunately, the hospital's ventilation ducts were relatively sturdy, otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to support the weight of both of us. Also, many of the hospital's electrical circuits were aging, and the exhaust fans weren't working at all. We were both sweating profusely from crawling, but we had to remain patient. Until we crawled above a room, where she carefully unscrewed the bolts. First, she pressed her ear against it to listen for any movement below, then quietly pushed the panel open a crack. Below was the hospital room on the 5th floor where she had hidden the patients. I crawled over for a look. Directly opposite the crack, an old woman lay there wearing an oxygen mask. 2 men were smoking cigars by the bed. They were still chatting, "If we still can't find her, it'll be dawn soon." As they chatted, one of them suddenly pulled off the oxygen mask and blew a mouthful of smoke into the old woman's face. The old woman choked and twitched violently. They laughed loudly. Laura clenched her fists tightly. Then she took out the crossbow from behind her. I had been wondering about it. She was carrying all sorts of things, but no crossbow bolts. Now that I finally saw her take out the crossbow to use it, I was instantly impressed. Then I saw her place an ampoule into the groove. Laura adjusted the crossbow's position, then suddenly whistled softly downwards. The people downstairs looked up. Laura fired instantly, and the thin ampoule shattered in the man's eyes. The man cried out in pain, covering his eyes with his hand, which was instantly covered in blood. Laura. The other guy was actually dumb enough to try and jump up to grab her. Laura, without hesitation, fired another crossbow bolt, directly shattering his eyeball. Then she jumped down from the opening in the ceiling, landing hard on that man, trying to inject him with the anesthetic she was holding. Seeing this, I didn't need her to ask. I lazily jumped down, landing right on target. With a crack, the man's spine broke. Laura looked at me in shock, seemingly wondering how I was so lucky to always land on people. However, in that split second, the anesthetic in her hand was knocked away. The man was still cursing her, "You bitch." I was just wondering if I should go help, when Laura had already pulled out a scalpel and slit his throat. The funny thing was, as blood spurted out, the man actually turned his head to look at the syringe. If he had known, he would have preferred to take the shot. After dealing with these two, Laura first closed the door and jammed a hairpin in the lock, then immediately rushed over to adjust the medical equipment. After adjusting the equipment, she immediately called me over, "Come help." I helped her push several hospital beds to barricade the door. At that moment, an old woman on a hospital bed called out, "Laura." She stretched out a trembling hand. Laura quickly went over and held her hand. "Don't be afraid, it'll be light soon." The old woman was shaking like a leaf, her cloudy eyes filled with tears. "Don't fight them, you can't beat them." Laura shook her head. "No, I can." After saying that, she steeled herself, pushed the old woman's hand away, and gestured for me to climb back up into the ventilation duct. She smashed the chair again, just like before, and sealed the ventilation duct opening. I whispered to her, "Were either of those two men your cousins?" Laura shook her head. "Oh, so we still have to find them." This time, she stopped in the hallway and pried open a panel. She said to me, "You only need to help me this far." As she spoke, she glanced at her watch. "If you hide for another 3 hours, my colleagues will come to work, and then they won't dare to do anything." I looked at her with great interest. "And you?" Laura reached out and touched the bags on her body. "I'll be fine." With that, she was about to jump down. I grabbed her. "Don't think your luck will always be this good." Neither of her two cousins were here now, which meant the core strength was still missing. With her scraps of metal, she was really unlikely to escape death. Laura said, "If I die, I die. Aren't you a witness?" I paused for a moment. She squeezed my hand tightly. "This is far enough, really, thank you." Then, she jumped down. I thought to myself, she's so confident. No, I have to follow her and see. I walked to the stairwell and ran into several people. I wasn't planning to bother with them, just wanted to pass by, but suddenly someone grabbed me. I was baffled. "What are you doing?" The three men were even more baffled than I was. "Who are you? What are you doing wandering around the hospital?" I said, "Do you own this hospital or something?" "The other party, it is our families." It dawned on me. Laura's cousin? Doesn't that mean I found them without even trying? Just then, his phone rang, and he stepped aside to answer it. The remaining two men started to get handsy with me. I impatiently pushed their hands away, then heard the person on the phone exclaim, "Uncle! Laura's unreliable old man?" I had just moved when a hand shot out to cover my mouth. Damn, such a dirty hand. I couldn't be bothered with these small fries and directly finished them off. I originally thought the father was just tough on the outside but soft on the inside, and had come specifically to check. Unexpectedly, the old man on the phone opened his mouth and said, "You said you were going to pick her up, but she's actually spreading rumors about you." What followed was a barrage from the nephew. "It's okay, she's my sister, I won't be angry with her." I looked from the outside. The hospital's wiring is very old, many lights aren't on, it's not safe for a girl alone. "Uncle, please don't say that. Laura will be sad if she hears it." "Alright, I'll head back first then." After a few perfunctory, heartfelt-sounding phrases, he hung up the phone, turned around, and found that his two underlings were already lying on the ground. This scumbag actually turned and tried to run. I grabbed him and plucked out his eyeballs. I dragged the blood-covered cousin number 2 upstairs. He completely lost it, couldn't even scream for help, just shrieked all the way, "Don't kill me, please don't kill me." That sound is hard to describe. It was as if he was using all his strength, but the volume had already been swallowed by fear. It sounded weak, powerless, and desperate. I chuckled as I dragged him into a room and locked the door. Then I squatted down and looked at him. I've always been curious, if a woman is caught by a pervert like you, how should she beg for mercy for you to let her go? He covered his bleeding eye sockets with his hands and forced a smile. I'm not that kind of person. I smiled too. "Do you think lying like that will work?" It didn't, so I snapped one of his fingers. "Think again." He really did think of all sorts of ways. Crying, begging, saying he had elderly relatives at home. Saying he would do anything as long as I didn't hurt him. He could give me money, and would absolutely not tell anyone about me. With every answer I heard, I found it unconvincing. As his fingers were broken one by one, he despaired and cursed me viciously, "My family won't let you go." I smiled. "Then I'll give you one more chance." I had him call his uncle. "Make him believe what you were planning to do to his daughter tonight." The call connected. Laura's father's voice sounded somewhat confused. "Alan?" I stared at him. He trembled and said, "Uncle, we're going to rape and kill Laura." The other end of the line sounded very surprised. "Alan, what are you talking about?" I slowly pressed a scalpel against his neck. He got anxious. "Uncle. It's true. Please call the police quickly. Otherwise, she'll kill me." Laura's father believed him even less. "Who's threatening you? Laura?" I smiled slightly, the scalpel slowly cutting into his skin. Cousin number 2 was about to break down. "Uncle, I'm telling the truth, please believe me." He blurted out his entire plan. "Uncle, do you remember a few days ago when we went to your house to persuade Laura? Laura slapped us. That was deliberately designed by them to provoke Laura. It just so happened that her dad saw it, and she refused to apologize. For this, the old man declared he no longer had her as a daughter. This afternoon, he specifically went to Laura's house again to persuade the father and daughter to reconcile, and also conveniently proposed to pick Laura up from work tonight. His coming tonight was also openly known. Uncle, please believe me, I really am a monster." Laura's father was completely stunned. "Alan, what on earth are you talking about? Is Laura threatening you?" I laughed out loud. I said, "Who opens their mouth and calls themselves an animal? That's too unreasonable of you." One can only say that the more comprehensively he lied initially, the harder it was for him to prove himself now. After saying that, I grabbed his leg and dragged him backward. He started screaming, "Uncle, uncle, help me." I picked up a baseball bat and made a practice swing. The person on the other end of the phone finally realized something was wrong, and his voice became somewhat anxious. "Laura? I'm warning you, don't you dare touch your brother." I brought the bat down hard on his head. Cousin number 2 finally stopped moving. I picked up the phone. "Dr. Laura's trash father, good evening." He roared on the other end of the phone, "What did you do to Alan?" Get Laura over here. I kicked the corpse on the floor. There's no Laura, I'm just an ordinary patient. I don't believe you. I clicked my tongue. Believe it or not. I'm going to eliminate your last nephew now. Then I hung up the phone. Originally, I didn't absolutely have to kill this cousin number 2. But just as I was about to leave, his phone lit up. I picked it up and took a look. There was a group chat discussing tonight's plan. Someone said there seemed to be other female patients upstairs. And this cousin number 2 had sent a voice message with a laugh in the group. Rape them all. Just then, he woke up, heard the voice message, and looked up in terror. That's not what I meant. I played this voice message repeatedly next to his ear. Even though he was laughing in the voice message, he couldn't stand it now. He suddenly screamed and slammed his head against the phone. I smiled and pulled my hand back. As a result, he smashed his head on the floor and died. Blood spread across the floor. Coming out of the room, just as I reached the stair landing, someone suddenly fell from the ceiling in the hallway. With a thud, they landed in front of me. I shone my flashlight on them and found it was a man I had encountered in the hallway before I left. Throat slit with a scalpel, already dead. Sounds of fighting and fleeing came from the rooftop. I frowned, turned off the flashlight, and headed upstairs. Past the 6th floor is the rooftop. If Laura was forced to the rooftop, it meant she was cornered. However, when I reached the rooftop, I didn't see anyone. Instead, I could see flashing lights outside the hospital. The police had arrived. I was a bit curious the police could actually be called upon. However, just then, I heard Laura shout, "Watch out." With a bang, I was shot by a sniper rifle. Laura screamed and ran out from behind cover. Someone rushed out from the side, pushed her to the ground, and started beating her violently. "You bitch. I'll kill you." The difference in strength between men and women puts women at a disadvantage in close combat. Just then, several more people ran out from behind nearby cover. 2 held her hands, and 1 held her legs. The person straddling her had a ferocious expression, choking her. "I'll kill you first. Starting tomorrow, I'll kill everyone downstairs one by one." I was getting really annoyed. I dug out the bullet and got up. Then I walked over to the person straddling Laura and pulled him off. Seeing me risen from the dead, he was terrified. Laura reacted quickly, immediately broke free, pulled a scalpel from her pocket, and slit his throat. The kind female doctor had completely transformed into a killing machine. Covered in blood, she entered an almost frenzied state and actually managed to kill the remaining 3 men. Her movements were fast and fierce, as if she was racing against time. And at that moment, the police broke down the hospital's main door and rushed in. The police arrived and, without a word, handcuffed Laura. Because I was Chinese, they didn't handcuff me at first. They just surrounded me, asking what happened. I didn't say a word. They thought I was scared speechless. Just then, an old man dripping with jewels suddenly rushed out of the crowd and slapped Laura. "You killed all 3 of your cousins?" Laura said, "Yes, I killed them all." The old man's face instantly turned purple. He started cursing her, calling her scum, trash, and so on. Laura waited until he finished yelling, then suddenly looked up. "Dad, you were the one who called the police, saying I was killing people in the hospital, right?" The old man said, "But it was too late to save your cousins." Laura suddenly looked at me. She said, Shirley was almost sniped. They must have mistaken her for me, right? The old man frowned and fell silent. Laura smiled, but it was a bitter smile no matter how you looked at it. "If I had been shot and killed then, would you have regretted it?" A flicker of guilt finally crossed the old bastard's eyes. Laura asked again, "Do you really believe I would lure 3 cousins and a large group of men to the hospital and kill them all by myself? Even an idiot couldn't come up with such ridiculous logic." But her deadbeat dad was still stubborn. If you hadn't insisted on that stupid hospital, the family wouldn't be in such chaos. Laura was being taken away in handcuffs. Before leaving, she suddenly said, "It's good. I've finally given up on you." The old man didn't pay any attention at all and even spat at her. At that moment, I suddenly rushed over, tackled the old man to the ground, and gave him a huge slap. The sudden incident stunned everyone for a moment. The old man desperately screamed for help. But I held him down firmly and beat him. Several police officers tried to pull me off but couldn't. It wasn't until I finally had my fill that I let the police pull me away. The old man got up, first spitting out a mouthful of blood and teeth. He was instantly furious, jumping up and down. "Arrest this Chinese woman too. Execute her. She must be executed." I pointed at him. "I want to report him now. He is the real mastermind behind this murder case." Just like no one believed Laura, no one believed me either. Laura and I were locked up together without even having our injuries examined. I frowned, looking around, and couldn't help but comment, "Your jail cells here are dirty and run down." Laura was baffled. "Have you been in better ones?" I said, "Of course, the sanitary conditions in Chinese prisons are very good." At that moment, 2 police officers walked up to the cell, smiling at us with ill intent. Laura was a bit nervous and quickly shielded me behind her. I lifted my eyelids. "What are you looking at?" "Looking at your mom." The 2 police officers cursed a few times, looking like they wanted to unlock the door and come in to do something to us. Laura stood up defiantly. "You dare." I walked over and punched the iron bars. The entire cell block boomed loudly. The area around the lock was dented. I looked up. "Come on." The police ran away. "Me, don't run. Come here. Let me beat you to death." "Fuck. TCH, cowards." Laura was going crazy. She couldn't help but ask me, "Shirley, what exactly do you do?" I said, "I sell antiques." "Laura, huh?" I turned to look at her. "What are you going to do next?" She looked back at me. "My lawyer will be here in the morning. I can help you contact your embassy." I didn't say anything, wanting to rest a bit. I'd been busy all night, and it was only a little over an hour until dawn. I was tired. However, I hadn't dozed off for long before my eyes snapped open again. I had been careless. Laura smelled strongly of blood. She had even entered a semi-conscious state due to excessive blood loss. I tilted my head and looked at her. "Hey." Laura leaned against the wall, looking at me, her eyes unfocused. "Are you a god?" I frowned. She even started talking nonsense. "I think I saw it. You were shot in the forehead. If it's true, I can rest assured." I took a deep breath. "You need to be your own god." Laura smiled, and her head drooped. I cursed and immediately got up and started kicking the iron bars. "Someone." 2 police officers hurried back. "What are you doing?" "Be quiet." I pointed at Laura. "She's injured, she needs to see a doctor." The police officer turned to leave. I kicked the iron bars. "I said she needs to see a doctor." I kicked the iron bars down. The police officers were shocked and drew their guns, pointing them at me. Just as the atmosphere became tense and a fight was about to break out, 2 people rushed into the police station. "Shirley." Oh, it was my best friend, Nina, with staff from the embassy. I wasn't lying, my family really does sell antiques. This trip to S country was originally to acquire cultural relics. Nina arrived in the capital first. I was delayed by 2 days due to visa issues. After the incident, I sent her a message telling her not to wait to pick me up. I didn't expect her to bring people from the embassy. At this moment, the embassy staff and the police engaged in urgent negotiations. Finally, they suggested I could leave first. I said, I'm not leaving. Dr. Laura needs medical attention. He turned his head and saw Laura in the corner. Country, female, dirty, bloody. Everything was understood without words. The staff member spoke, out of humanitarian consideration, I think you should let this lady receive medical treatment. The police officer's face darkened. Sorry sir, this is not within your jurisdiction. My damn hand was itching for a slap. I didn't hold back. When have you ever known me to be good at holding back? So I swung my arm and slapped him. He raised his hand to hit me, then turned his head to our ambassador. Aren't you going to do anything? Staff member, Shirley, don't be impulsive. That's what he said, but he stood far away. I glared at that male police officer, wanting to hit him again. Finally, Nina pulled me back a bit and stood in front of me. Here's the thing, as far as I know, it's mandatory to provide medical treatment to seriously injured suspects. If you don't agree, she will hit you. Nina pointed at the door I had kicked down. She hits really hard. You don't need to take a few more hits, right? The police finally compromised. We moved Laura to the only general hospital in the small town, which was also her family's property. Seeing her brought in covered in blood, the doctor on duty actually wanted to refuse treatment. I asked him, why? He gave me a contemptuous smile. Isn't she a doctor herself? Doesn't she want to open a hospital? Take her back and let her stitch herself up. Even Nina was shocked. Are you even human, saying things like that? He scoffed and was about to leave when I grabbed his hair and pulled him back. At this point, my anger was about to boil over. Treat her. Or I'll beat you to death. Nina and the embassy staff hurriedly tried to pull me away. Calm down. Calm down. I let go, and the doctor looked at us in terror. Nina said in a relatively gentle tone, what she means is, save her quickly, or we will beat you to death. He looked at the swollen face of the accompanying police officer. Nina took out the embassy staff's ID card, then pointed at that staff member, he will back us up. Nina added, either way, you don't need to get beaten up, right? So Laura was smoothly admitted to the operating room. Even the staff member who had been with us the whole time smiled. I'd heard Professor Richard's daughter was extraordinary, and today I've seen it. By the way, my name is John Smith, a pleasure to meet you. What a common name. After Laura came out of the operating room, she was still unconscious, pale from blood loss. That doctor started trying to kick us out again. We've treated her, are you going to hang around here? This made even the usually good-tempered Nina furious. We're staying right here, what about it? You good for nothing. John pushed the male doctor aside and told him, she is our important witness. Go arrange for her admission immediately. The male doctor swallowed his anger and left. Even John sighed heavily, asking if we knew any of Laura's relatives or friends. Someone needs to stay and watch her, otherwise I'm afraid the hospital staff will misbehave. Nina asked him how they would misbehave. John said awkwardly, sexual assault in country hospitals is not uncommon. Just a couple of days ago, there was news about a woman being assaulted in an ambulance while her husband was right behind her. Just as he was speaking, Laura woke up. She was still very weak, looking around until she found me. My house, there's a computer. I said, I'll go get it. Nina stayed behind to look after Laura. John insisted on going with me to Laura's house, and on the way, he kept trying to persuade me to return to China as soon as possible. Who can sort out the mess in country? Don't you know that one of the major characteristics here is criminal politicians? He said that in the current cabinet, at least 33 people were facing criminal charges, 24 of whom were suspected of attempted murder. They were all elected by the voters, one vote at a time. Do you think a place like this can have any rule of law? But when we arrived at Laura's house, the lock on her door had already been picked, and the house was ransacked. John also fell silent. The thief hadn't left yet. When John and I suddenly burst in, they were also stunned for a moment. "Who are you?" Without saying a word, I punched him. Immediately, several men swarmed forward. John yelled, "Don't be impulsive." But then he too was impulsively punched, which really angered him. Thieves, and so brazen. Then he took off his suit jacket and started fighting. They wanted to escape, but I wouldn't let them. "Strip naked before you leave." A group of men looked at me in shock. I was serious. "You're not taking a single needle out of this room. Otherwise, I'll kill you right now. You choose." Instantly, their eyes filled with hatred, as if they had suffered a great humiliation. But what could they do? They couldn't win a fight. So, 7 men started undressing in front of me. When they got down to their underwear, they couldn't bring themselves to take it off and all looked at John. John was baffled. "You don't expect me to plead for you, do you? I may be a man, but I'm also a human being." So those men cursed and grumbled as they took off their underwear, covering their fronts and backs as they went out. I grabbed one of them. "You can't leave." This man had been beaten black and blue by John, but you could still see his resemblance to Laura. He was probably Laura's brother. I asked him directly, "Full-blooded?" The answer was half-brother. I sneered and asked him again, "What were you looking for?" He said, "None of your business." I slapped him. So he behaved, lisping, "Computer." Oh, the computer again. Then I wouldn't be polite and would take a look first. Inside was Laura's work report. In the second half of last year alone, there were over 500 cases of gynecological diseases in teenage girls. The biggest reason is that menstruation is considered unclean here, sanitary napkins are not widely available, and girls have to use mud, rags, leaves. There were over 2,000 cases of adult gynecological diseases treated. There were over 1,000 cases of internal bleeding due to domestic violence. In addition, there were 2 cases where common tooth decay was delayed until it led to sepsis, with 1 fatality. But what Laura had highlighted in the statistical table were the mild cases. By the end of last year, the number of mild cases had gradually increased. She wrote on the form. They finally dared to walk into the hospital. This was what they called the key to wealth. Then, at the beginning of this year, the rate of mild cases plummeted. I flipped page after page, all blank. It was like a silent collapse. John couldn't take it anymore and lit a cigarette. He said self-deprecatingly, "I've worked in S-country for 10 years, I didn't expect my understanding to be refreshed again." He said he knew many women in S-country had been assaulted by doctors in hospitals. He also knew that over half of the women were killed after being assaulted. He had even seen news reports of women's bodies appearing in forests, ditches, and roadsides. He had long grown accustomed to the local people's numbness towards victims. However, the largest group of victims were the invisible women. This is why she risked her life to open the hospital, right? She's hitting a rock with an egg. But I frowned and took his cigarette butt. Smoking in someone else's house is particularly rude. After saying that, I pressed the cigarette butt hard onto the naked man's neck. John's pupils quaked. "That's too much." My expression was cold. "You might not know, I have an antisocial personality." "John, oh, that makes sense then." I stared at the naked brother. "You went to all this trouble, surely you didn't just come to steal her work data?" The naked brother couldn't stand the torture. He finally yelled, "The stuff has already been shredded by me. You'll never find it again." I laughed out loud. I said, "I've been to prison." John coughed lightly. "Not very surprising. For illegally accessing computer systems. Commonly known as hacking." "John, that's a bit surprising." It took half an hour, but I recovered all the files they had shredded. As soon as I opened one, it was an X-rated scene. The camera focused on a girl's face as she was gang raped. Still dare to go to the hospital? Laura, your patient is delicious. I said, I've seen this girl before. She was with me at Laura's hospital last night. She even helped Laura fight people. And there were 9 more such folders. I was about to open the next one, but John stopped me. He looked at the naked man, his expression already very grave. He was watching with great interest just now. I laughed out loud. John, Shirley, are you mentally stable? I said yes, very good. Watching with great interest, huh? So I made him walk with me to his house. Laura had moved out after falling out with her family. Later, when the hospital started losing money, all her private savings were invested in a short period of time. She moved into an old, run-down, small place. The way home was quite long. It's true that people in S country love to watch a spectacle. Soon, a crowd had gathered around us. The naked brother was forced to shout, "Take pictures. You can take pictures." The town residents weren't polite either. He was about to cry, but he didn't dare not shout, and so he shouted all the way. John had a "I want to die" expression the whole way. Finally, he brought us to the gate of Laura's family mansion. Her family members ran out. But I remembered she said she had given up hope. Among them was a woman dripping with jewels, likely her birth mother, and thus this naked man's stepmother. Seeing her stepson abused like this, she screamed the loudest, shaking her husband, "Honey, honey, save him." Laura's father was the richest man in town. His portraits hung everywhere. Don't mind that he was beaten by me earlier. Now, with a crowd around him, he felt confident again. His son ran back crying, and I didn't stop him. "Dad," she took the computer. He shielded his son with his hand, pushing him into the crowd behind. "Come in and talk," he said to me. I smiled. Okay. John wanted to say something, but looking at the computer in my hand, he finally sighed and followed me in. Laura's wealthy mother made me a pot of tea and said contemptuously, "Drink it. You won't get tea this good back in your country." Neither of us paid her any attention. John first took out his work ID and placed it on the table. "Everyone, I am a Chinese diplomat. I am here today to act as a witness for our citizen. Please remain calm." The old man's face was grim. He probably hadn't intended to be calm at first. Outside the door stood a dense crowd of their household staff. At this point, he said to me, "Regarding the fright you received at our hospital, we can offer compensation. We can also buy the computer in your hand." After saying that, he even glanced at John. "This is out of respect for this gentleman." I said, "No." The old man was stunned. "You haven't heard the price yet." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not short on money." The old man got angry too. "Then what exactly do you want?" "Miss, I don't know what your country is like, but here, overly greedy people don't have good endings." I looked at him. "Within 3 days, kowtow and apologize to Laura, then transfer all your assets to Laura." John looked at me in shock. The old man was also shocked. "Impossible." I stood up. 3 days. Your last chance. Nothing happened after 3 days. Let alone an apology. The family didn't even visit Laura once. Even John couldn't help but complain, "No matter what, she's still his own daughter, right? And he knows she's a victim." These past few days, the police station kept coming to bother Laura, even trying to take her back to the station. Laura's lawyer was quite effective and managed to fend them off each time. The truth was already obvious. It was just that Laura had confessed to those dozen or so deaths, and the final issue was how to classify them. John felt the family was too cold. Seeing that we were ignoring him, he said to me with a worried expression, "I have to go back to the capital." I closed the computer. "I'll go with you. I'm going back to China." John, huh? Nina also stood up and said to Laura, "Take care." Laura nodded. "Safe travels." When I said I was going back to China, I meant it. John drove us to the airport, still looking bewildered. "Are you really leaving?" John, "So you guys aren't going to pull some big stunt?" Nina turned back to look at him. "What big stunt? We don't do illegal things." John chuckled awkwardly. "Oh, I see. That's right. But Dr. Laura, what about her?" I almost laughed. "Don't just see women as weak victims. On the contrary, she is very strong. When I went to Laura's house before, I discovered they had a very advanced AI security system. The old man had 3 sons and 1 daughter from 3 wives, and only Laura was a highly educated graduate with experience studying abroad. So I went back and asked Laura, and sure enough, she was the one responsible for liaising with people at the time. She gave me the data without hesitation. I custom-made a virus for this system and easily managed to hack it. Before the plane took off, I took control of that system. Then I turned on their home surveillance and enjoyed the show with Nina. Laura's home security system started blaring alarms. All the doors opened simultaneously, including the safe, Laura's mother's jewelry box, luxury collection cabinets, and so on. The alarm sound attracted nearby residents. A large amount of wealth was thus brazenly exposed to the town's residents. The scene descended into chaos. The old man was furious and immediately called someone to fix it. This was just testing the waters. After playing around for a while, I let the system recover. Nina said, "Everyone in town must have come by. The people in their small town really love a good spectacle, huh?" I deeply agreed. By the time the plane landed back in China, according to the time difference, it was late at night for them. So I activated the system again. The piercing alarm almost tore through the night sky of the small town. Having experienced it once, almost the entire town responded instantly. Power outage, closed doors, townspeople who loved a good show, were easily excitable, and also liked to queue. Perfect. As Nina watched their whole family scrambling in the dark, she didn't forget to comment. "More exciting than your night." I smiled a little. Because they weren't prepared. Unlike Laura, she was so clever. Actually, that night, Laura was the real hunter. It was quite obvious. If you are a female doctor, living in a place with the most severe gender discrimination. Since childhood, you've seen women like you in your hometown being arbitrarily humiliated and trampled upon. So you had a dream, to return to your hometown and open a hospital specifically for women. You succeeded once. But then you failed. Because in your family, there were these cousins. Although they usually didn't do honest work, your father believed they could completely take over your hospital. You argued endlessly about this, but you never gave up. At this point in the story, others would praise you for being tenacious. But, to accomplish something, passively being tenacious is not enough. You also need to be smart enough, bold enough, and proactive enough. Coincidentally, you possess all these qualities. That night, your greedy cousins were preparing to bring a group of people to the hospital to kill you. Besides fear, you also realized this was also your only chance. Because you actually knew very well that these people would not let you and your hospital go. Unless they were all dead. I told Nina, from the very beginning, she was determined to kill all those people. She must have made plans before, possibly even rehearsed them. Such a fierce escape, yet she could ensure the absolute safety of her patients. Even that unreliable little girl was a helper she had trained early on. And look at the key to her winning the lawsuit. For example, she had recorded all her calls to the police and her parents for help. Also, she insisted on using equipment found in the hospital as weapons. She even had many self-defense wounds on her body, which she intentionally left. Was there a risk? Yes. But how can one achieve rebirth without facing death? As long as she could survive such a huge matter, she really managed to settle it just like that. It should be said that the only accident in her entire plan was my appearance. To avoid harming an innocent person, she specifically detoured downstairs to send me out. It was only later that I found my way back myself and became a part of her plan. Time flew by, and I had been back in China for half a year. During this time, Laura kept in touch with Nina. Laura's situation was also relayed to me by her. For example, Laura injured her right hand and could no longer hold a scalpel. But both her parents were seriously injured in that conflict, and 2 of her 3 brothers died. She logically returned to the family and took over the family's responsibilities. These were all rather ordinary pieces of news. Until one day, the long unheard from John called Nina. I could hear him roaring through the phone, "Quick, look at the link I sent you." Nina was startled. "What?" "No, Mr. Smith, you're a diplomat, please be more composed." "John, quick, get Shirley to watch it with you." "John, Laura is running for local elections." I burst out laughing. A country of criminal politicians, makes sense. Nina excitedly clicked on the link. In the video, Laura was adorned with flowers and giving a speech. She said loudly, "Today, I don't want to talk to you about the suffering of women, because you all know it in your hearts. Nor will I humbly beg for human rights, because they originally belong to us. Someone once told me that we can be our own gods. I am here to let everyone see our strength." The square was packed with people, and the cheers were like thunder. Nina was incredibly excited. "She's so amazing. She turned all disadvantages into advantages, and utilized all unwritten rules to the extreme. A flower that can bloom towards the sun in the mud can, naturally, also become the sun."